Hello, Snugglebugs. Welcome to today's Hearthstone video. We're going to be going over the Demon Hunter Titan card review. We're going to be starting up here with what you see on the screen. The 1/5 Argonite Golem. It has +1 attack for each card you've drawn this turn. Now we know that Demon Hunter can easily, at least one, right? So it's at least a 2/5, which in of itself isn't terrible. And Demon Hunter has many ways to draw cards. So a lot of the times this could easily be at least a 3/4 or even a 5/5 for 3 mana, depending on the turn. I think this is just an overall good card. Like I said, 3 mana, 2/5, decent already. I don't know exactly which deck this will be in. If I'm looking at the ones that are out there today, you could potentially play this in a deck with like Relic of Phantasm or Relic of Dimensions, because you draw say 2 or 4 cards that turn. Maybe even make this free, and all of a sudden you play that as a 0 mana 5/5. It's pretty powerful. That is pretty powerful. So maybe that is where it fits in. I already answered my own question. Overall, I think this is a well-rounded deck. Not jumping out to me as like super power, well-rounded card. Not super powerful, just a nice, decent card. Nice little tanky. Almost a shame it doesn't have taunt, but again, I guess because it's at least a 2/5 for 3, that might be too strong. But yeah, that's Argonite Golem. Next up, we have the Crystalline Statue, which is a 2 mana 5/4, which of course sounds amazing. Has Rush, starts dormant, but it's after you draw 4 cards that this awakens. So you play it for 2, and you have to draw, like, maybe say it's 4 turns later, but of course, again, you're talking draw cards in Demon Hunter, so it could very well almost be the next turn if you played something like the 1 mana 1/1 Outcast, draw a card into the Spectral Visions to draw 2 cards if it's outcasted, because you drew 1 for that turn. All of a sudden you have a, first of all, you just drew a bunch of cards, which is nice, but then you also have a, say, potentially turn 3, 5/4 Rush to help deal with your opponent's board, and plus your 1/1 and all the other stuff that you got. I think this card is extremely strong. We'll see where it plays into, of course. Even just a 2 mana dormant, so you know you have something that's going to come up in a couple turns as 5/4 Rush. Like, a lot of time, depending on the type of deck you're playing, 2 mana is obviously really important, but lately I've been noticing, if you skip turn 2, it's not usually the end of the world, unless, of course, you're playing against Frost Death Knight or something along those lines. Next up, we have Disciple of Argus. I think a Defender of Argus. It's been a while since we've seen that in play. This is a 3 mana 2/2 Death Rattle summon 2/2 elementals with Taunt and Tattoo. So this is overall, spread across 3 bodies, and of course there's a Death Rattle attached to it, but effectively it's a 3 mana 6/6, which is obviously really powerful. Now, of course, it's kind of slow. On turn 3, you're playing a 2/2 that doesn't really impact the board, doesn't have Taunt itself, etc. So if your opponent doesn't trade into it, you kind of got to potentially make a bad trade yourself. It lets your opponent kind of decipher. So say if they have 3 minions on the board, they can trade and take out the 2 taunts without it really... it would protect your face, obviously, but it wouldn't, do much. As weird as it is, for a 3 mana 6/6, I think, personally, this seems a little slow. I don't know. It'll see some play, obviously, in certain decks, but I could be wrong. But it feels a little slow to me. Next up, we have the Eredar Deceptor, which is a 4 mana 3/5, that whenever you draw a card, summon a 1/1 demon with Rush. Now, again, we're looking to add, it seems like, a lot more synergies with draw cards. First off, if this survives even to your normal draw, it becomes a 4/6. Obviously, it might not. But if you play this and then attack with like the weapon that draws you like 5 cards because of your outcast, all of a sudden you get 5 1/1s with Rush that could trade into things and sets you up to keep this alive, and it keeps going. I think with a good deck with draw power and all that kind of stuff, or drawing abilities, cards like this will shine. If there ends up being a deck that doesn't have a ton of drawing extra stuff in it, maybe this won't be that good. But 3/5 is an okay stat line. If you get 1/1/1 1/1/1 Rush off of this, it would be considered, in my opinion, a good card. If you get more than that, it's a great card. So I can see this finding a home in a lot of different decks with draw. Our first legendary for the Demon Hunter is Jotun the Eternal. Battlecry, 5 mana 4/5, Battlecry, for the rest of the game, cast a copy of the first spell you draw each turn at enemies. So I think this is just amazing if you have a deck or cards that just always hit enemies, or like depending on how you build your deck with spells and things like that. And I don't know how this works if it isn't targetable. Like, what if you just draw a card like Spectral Sight that would draw you 2 cards? Does it just automatically cast for free? Or does it have to be targetable spells? So if you know that, let me know in the comments down below. If it doesn't have to be targeted, then obviously this card is just amazing. I would give this 5 stars for that reason. Even if not, and I'm sorry, I know I'm not really rating these cards, so apologies. But even if not, this card is just really good. I think there's enough spells in decks to help you keep alive. It allows you, and it casts a copy, not even the original card. So, like, you know, and the stat line is really good. I think a card like this could actually have a really bad stat line and make it so it's like, oh, you get a really good effect, but you have to play it with nothing for the turn. So I'm thinking this is going to go into most decks, depending on how it works, of course. Momentum. 5 mana, give you hero +4 attack this turn, costs 1 less for each card you've drawn this turn. So obviously, right off the hop, until you finish reading that, 5 mana, give you hero 4 attack. Not very good. The idea, I think, is you would have both of these in your hand. You would have that turn where you draw, like, say your 5 cards in the turn, and then you would play both your momentums for free. Now, again, I could be wrong, and I haven't looked at the rest of these cards yet, if they have extra draw, but the main thing in Demon Hunter right now that draws a ton is, I believe, the weapon with Death Rattle, which would be counterintuitive, because if you drew the 5 cards to make this cost 0, you've already attacked, and therefore the momentum won't actually be super useful. So I'd be interested to see what other sort of combos outside of the spectral sights, etc., that would allow momentum to really pop off. To gain momentum, right? We now have the Mythical Terror, a 7 mana 3/10 with lifesteal. At the end of your turn, force all enemies to attack this. Obviously fantastic, especially against aggro. It is a demon as well, so like you can get this cheated out with the big demon decks and get it out against the aggro decks and heal a bunch. This is kind of like a reverse Hound in the sense where it doesn't have rush, but everything has to attack it. So I think in the right deck, this could do really well. Obviously, Hound does really well. Now, if you play this into like an 8/8 or something like that, it's really just going to damage itself and heal you by 3, which isn't fantastic. But again, same could go for Hound, and Hound is really good, more so probably in Hunter because of the revive effects. But I think this is a good card. I could see it, weirdly enough, potentially also going down to 6. I know it's got 10 health, but it does feel like it's a pretty high cost. But again, I honestly didn't know Hound was going to be as impactful as it was. I knew it was going to be good, but didn't realize it was going to make like a meta-defining card. So who knows? We'll see. The Runic Adornment is a 2 mana, discover a spell that costs 3 or less, shuffle 2 copies into your deck that has cast when drawn. So you would discover a spell from your deck, let's say Relic of Phantasms. Relic of Phantasms, you get 2 copies put of that into your deck that cast for free when they get drawn, which is huge, especially for relics. I think that's exactly where I personally see this going in. Now, it also is cast when drawn, which effectively counts as a draw, and then you draw again. So also could potentially play into these draw effects, right? The more stuff you have. And let's say you pick, I know I keep going back to it, but Spectral Sight. All of a sudden you get free Spectral Sights, which would draw you cards, and then it itself casts when drawn, and it would cycle itself through, and then you play your momentums, and all of a sudden you have a full hand and a bunch of cheap stuff that you played and a bunch of attack on your hero. Now that's a perfect world, but I can definitely see people trying to build a deck around it. And then we have our Forge card for the Demon Hunter, which is Weight of the World, which is just draw 2 cards, or Forge, draw cards until you have as many in hand as your opponent. First. Draw cards and first. So then you still draw 2 cards after. Wow. Okay, so this is actually really powerful. I mean, 3 mana, draw 2 cards is Arcane Intellect, right? It's pretty useful. If you do Forge it, it kind of gains the old Paladin card that used to draw until your opponent had the same amount, and then you draw 2 more afterwards, if I'm reading that correctly, which means, like, say your opponent has 6 cards and you have none, you would draw up to 6 and then draw 2 more. So in that example, this could be an 8 cost, or 3 mana, draw 8. Obviously doubtful, especially because you're playing this in a draw card deck. You probably have other draw card stuff, and this could just make it actually also in an aggro deck for that reason. Aggro out, then you play this. The counterintuitive nature to that, though, is because you have to forge it. I mean, this is actually a 5 cost if you want both effects. So honestly, I think it's just good, though. Like I said, 3 mana, draw 2 cards is already good enough in my opinion. This card will see tons of play. Last but not least, we have the Argus, the Emerald Star, the Titan for the Demon Hunter, the big boy himself, Argus. Now, that makes me think of Hera's Chad in Smite, so apologies if you're not a Smite player. It makes no sense to you whatsoever. But this Titan, and it says minions to the left of this have Rush, and the ones to the right have Lifesteal. So it is kind of about helping the people on both sides. And then, of course, it has its 3 abilities, which is Crystal Carving, discover a Death Rattle minion, and then it costs 3 less, so you can, of course, play it. Presumably, potentially get one with Taunt, put it on the Lifesteal side, or something that you want to die that you can put on the Rush side. Show of Force, reduce the cost of all minions in your hand by 2. which if in a draw deck, you can have a lot of minions, and then of course you can play them on the rush side, maybe cycle them through. Argonite Army, sorry, that sounded weird, which is summon 4 2/2 elementals with taunt. And I'm guessing, because the way that usually works is they would go to the right, and a lot of stuff, the summon minions go to the right, so they would all have lifesteal and taunt, which is really good, and there's a little picture of them there, Crystalline Elemental. And so I think this Titan looks really good, the 5/9 stats. Now, it doesn't really have like a effect per se when you play these cards, so I think in that sense it seems weaker than some of the other ones. But again, I think even just giving yourself 5/9 plus 8/8 stats with taunt and lifesteal, if that's the turn you want to play, is really good, right? Like, I think the effects of this is amazing, very minion heavy, which is fine. And yeah, I think this will see play in almost every Demon Hunter deck. Thank you very much for watching. Have a great rest of your day. Subscribe if you want to see more card reviews and gameplay when Titans gets released. Have a good one.